An elite doctor cruelly dares a maid's daughter to save a dying patient, mocking her. What he doesn't know is that her hidden genius could save a life no one else can. A man is dying on a cot in the middle of a mountain medical camp. Machines scream. Doctors scramble. Robert Shaw, the chief surgeon, snaps. "You think you know something we don't?" His voice drips contempt. A teenage girl steps forward. Wrong uniform. Wrong status. The wrong person to speak. Yet she does. "Stop," she says. "You're killing him." He laughs like it's a joke. "Go on, Maid. Tell us. What's your expert opinion? Go heal him." She lays her trembling hands on the tools of a profession she wasn't allowed to study. A maid's daughter challenging medicine's elite. One life hanging by a thread. One voice saying what no one else dared to see. This isn't just a story about a genius girl saving a stranger's life. It's the story of how a nobody became the one person the world cannot ignore. And before I forget, where are you watching from today? Leave a comment below. Enjoy the story. A child's quiet knowledge held the key to a man's life. The humid Appalachian air was thick enough to carry the sound of every cough, every quiet sob. In a clearing high in the mountains, the Albright Foundation had erected a city of white medical tents, a beacon of modern medicine for a community that often went without. 17-year-old Abigail held a damp cloth, wiping down a stainless steel tray. She worked with quiet, methodical precision. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a simple, severe ponytail, and her eyes, a sharp, intelligent blue, missed nothing. She and her mother, Martha, were part of the local cleanup crew. They were hired to maintain the impossible standards of the visiting doctors. They sterilized equipment, mopped floors slick with humidity, and disposed of biohazard waste. They were shadows in white coats, present but unseen. Abigail's mother, Martha, polished the glass on a supply cabinet. At 45, Martha's hands were rough from a life of hard work, but her movements were dignified. She was proud to have this job, even for just 2 weeks. It paid well, and she felt she was part of something important. "Abby," Martha whispered, nodding toward a corner. "Wipe down the legs of that gurney. Dr. Shaw is doing his rounds." Abigail nodded and moved to obey. She had seen Dr. Robert Shaw. It was impossible to miss him. He was the leader of the surgical team, a man whose reputation was as spotless as his white coat. He moved through the chaotic triage tent like a shark in a koi pond, elegant, powerful, and entirely in charge. His voice was always calm, always cutting. Just then, a young local nurse, volunteering her time, approached him. "Doctor," she said hesitantly. "Mr. Peterson in cot 4. His pressure is still high. I was thinking maybe." "You were thinking," Dr. Shaw interrupted, not even looking up from his tablet. "Nurse, I am running a differential diagnosis on 3 critical patients while planning a femoral artery bypass. You are here to follow protocols, not to think. Am I clear?" The nurse flushed red. "Yes, doctor." "Good. Now check his chart again and do as you were told." He swept past her, and his eyes landed on Abigail. She was crouched by the gurney, wiping down a spot of mud. He didn't see her. He saw only a task undone. His gaze flickered to Martha. It was a look Abigail knew well. It was a look that dismissed, that measured, and that found them lacking. It was a look that said, "You are the help." Dr. Shaw's mouth tightened. He hated untidiness. He gestured at Abigail, as if she were a piece of furniture. "Martha, is it? Keep your girl moving. This isn't a bring your daughter to work day. This is a sterile field." "Yes, doctor." "Right away," Martha murmured, her face burning. "Abby, hurry now." Abigail said nothing. She finished the gurney and moved to the next. But her eyes followed him. She watched his hands. She listened to his commands. She observed the other doctors, the hurried, nervous residents, the tired, competent nurses, and the other woman who seemed to be in charge. This second doctor was Dr. Evelyn Reed, a senior diagnostician from Johns Hopkins. She was older than Shaw, with kind, tired eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She watched Dr. Shaw with a look of clinical patience, as if observing a difficult but talented student. The doors to the triage tent burst open, and 2 men rushed in carrying a third. "We need help." He just collapsed. The man they carried was in his 50s. His face was a pale, bluish-gray. He was gasping, a terrible, wet sound that rattled in his chest. "Put him here," a resident shouted, guiding them to an empty trauma cot. The tent's energy shifted. Dr. Shaw was at the cot in an instant. "Stats," Give me a pulse ox, BP cuff, and a 12-lead EKG. Now, the team moved. Sats are 84 and dropping, doctor, a nurse called out. He's coughing up. It's pink, frothy sputum, a resident said, his voice tight with alarm. Severe pneumonia, Dr. Shaw declared, his voice cutting through the panic. Atypical presentation. He's drowning in his own fluids. Get him on 15 liters, non-rebreather mask, and push 500 of saline to support his pressure. Martha, sensing the urgency, grabbed her daughter's arm. Abby, we need to clear out. We'll be in the way. But Abigail stood frozen, her eyes locked on the patient. She watched the nurse hang the non-rebreather mask. The man's panic only grew. He clawed at the mask, his eyes wide with terror. His breathing became worse. Doctor, Sats are down to 79. It's the pneumonia, Shaw snapped. The infection is too advanced. Increase the PEEP. Force the oxygen in. From the back of the tent, Abigail watched. Her hand went to the small, worn leather journal in the pocket of her oversized scrubs. It was her most precious possession. It had belonged to her great-grandmother, Florence Albright. Florence had been a combat nurse in World War II. She had served in field hospitals from Normandy to Bastogne. Her journal was not filled with personal feelings. It was filled with observations. Thousands of pages of handwritten notes on symptoms, treatments, and outcomes, sketched under candlelight while bombs fell. Abigail had read the journal so many times its pages were soft as cloth. She had memorized her great-grandmother's sharp, clear handwriting, and she knew what she was looking at. The fools always think it is the lungs, Florence had written in 1944, describing a soldier overloaded with fluids. They see the water and blame the vessel, not the pump. But look at the neck. Look at the froth. The veins stand out like ropes. The lungs are not sick, they are drowning. The heart is failing. Abigail looked at the patient. His neck veins were horribly distended. The pink froth on his lips was a classic sign. The high-flow oxygen was just forcing the fluid deeper into his lung tissue. They weren't saving him. They were killing him. Abby now, Martha hissed, pulling her arm. They're wrong, Mama. Abigail whispered, her voice trembling. What? They're wrong. It's not pneumonia. It's his heart. As they moved to leave, they passed two residents taking a break by the supply closet. Who's the girl? One resident whispered, sipping a coffee. She's with the cleaning crew. Martha's daughter. Why is she just staring? It's creepy. Shaw is going to have a fit if he sees her gawking at a critical patient. Probably just morbid curiosity, the first resident said with a shrug. Look, just try to stay out of Shaw's way today. He's in a mood. Martha gripped Abigail's hand tighter, her face set in a mask of polite composure. She pulled her daughter toward the exit. They didn't know that Abigail wasn't staring with morbid curiosity. She was staring in horror. The alarms on the patient's monitor suddenly shrieked. A long, flat tone. He's in V-fib. Patient is crashing. Get the cart. Shaw yelled. Starting compressions. The team flew into action. A resident began pumping on the man's chest. He's not responding. Doctor. Dr. Shaw was sweating now, his perfect composure cracking. He was losing a patient in front of his whole team. He looked up, his eyes wild with frustration, and they landed on Martha. She was standing by the door, frozen, her daughter's hand in hers, both of them watching. What are you still doing here? Shaw roared, his voice echoing in the sudden silence as the compressions paused. Martha flinched. We were just leaving, doctor. I'm so sorry. Sorry. Shaw laughed, a short, ugly sound. He was angry at the patient, at the residents, at himself. He pointed a gloved finger at Martha. You're all watching, staring at this man die. You think you know something we don't? You've been wiping floors and listening in. You think you're a doctor now? Martha turned pale. No, sir. Of course not. Then what is it? You've been here all week. You must have picked something up. His voice was dripping with sarcasm, a cruel, public humiliation. Go on, Maid. Tell us. What's your expert opinion? The residents stared, shocked. Dr. Reed looked up from her chart, her brow furrowed in disapproval. Martha just shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. Sir, please. What's the matter? Cack out your tongue. Shaw sneered. I thought you cared. Go on. Go heal him, if you care so much. He turned his back on her, a final, dismissive gesture. Charge to 200. Clear. A jolt went through the patient's body. Nothing. Still V-fib. Martha began to cry silently, her shoulders shaking with humiliation. Abigail, who had been silent this entire time, let go of her mother's hand. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the tension like a scalpel. Stop. Every head in the tent turned. Dr. Shaw, paddles in hand, froze. He turned around slowly. Abigail was walking toward him. She was walking past the residents, past the supply carts, and straight toward the dying man. What did you say? Shaw asked, his voice dangerously low. I said stop, Abigail repeated. Her fear was gone, replaced by a cold certainty. You're going to kill him. The tent was absolutely silent. The only sound was the steady, ominous tone of the heart monitor. Abigail, no. Martha cried, rushing forward. Abigail put a hand out, stopping her mother without looking back. Her eyes were fixed on the patient. Dr. Shaw's face shifted from shock to disbelief, and then to a dark, cold amusement. Well, it seems the help has an opinion after all. He gestured to the dying man with a sweep of his hand. Be my guest. Dr. Shaw's mocking words, be my guest, hung in the air. The long, flat tone of the heart monitor was the only reply. Martha rushed forward, grabbing her daughter's thin arm. Abby, no. Come away. Please. You don't know what you're doing. Mama. Abigail said, her voice quiet but vibrating with a strange new power. Let go. I do know. She gently pulled her arm free and walked to the head of the cot. The residents and nurses froze, looking at Dr. Shaw for guidance. But Shaw was paralyzed, his face a mask of disbelief. This was not how his joke was supposed to end. Abigail looked at the patient, then at the monitors, then at the nurse holding the oxygen mask. You, Abigail said, her voice clear and sharp. Take that mask off him. Now. The nurse looked at Dr. Shaw. Doctor, he's hypoxic, you little fool. Shaw snapped, recovering his voice. He needs that oxygen. He's hypoxic because his lungs are full of fluid, Abigail said, never taking her eyes off the patient. You are forcing air into water. It's called agitation. You're making it worse. Take off the mask. Give him a simple nasal cannula. 6 liters. That's insane, a resident muttered. I will have you forcibly removed, Shaw shouted. He grabbed Abigail's shoulder. Robert, stop. It was Dr. Evelyn Reed. She stepped forward, her quiet voice cutting through the tent more effectively than Shaw's roar. She placed a hand on Shaw's arm. What? Shaw was incredulous. Evelyn, this man is dead. And this child is interfering with my team. Your team is failing, Robert, Dr. Reed said calmly. What you are doing is not working. He is still in VFib. Let her talk. Dr. Reed turned her sharp, intelligent eyes on Abigail. Explain. Quickly. Abigail pointed to the 4-bag. Who ordered saline? I did, Shaw said. His pressure was bottoming out. You're flooding a failing pump, Abigail said. His heart can't handle the volume he already has. That's why he's crashing. Stop the saline drip. Stop it right now. The resident nearest the 4-pole looked at Shaw, then at Reed. Dr. Reed nodded once. The resident quickly clamped the line shut. And look at his neck, Abigail continued, pointing. The entire team, including Dr. Shaw, followed her finger. You see that? The jugular vein distension. His veins are standing out like ropes. His heart isn't circulating the blood. It's all backing up. It's backing up into his lungs. That pink froth. She pointed to the man's lips. That is classic pulmonary edema. His heart is failing. This is not pneumonia. A resident's eyes widened. She's right. That's a textbook presentation for congestive heart failure. Of course it is, Shaw sneered, trying to regain control. It's a comorbidity. But he is still in VFib. He is still dead. And all your brilliant observation hasn't changed that. He grabbed the paddles again. Charged to 200. No, Abigail shouted. You're shocking a heart that is drowning and suffocating. You're just making it angrier. Get me 80 milligrams of Lasix. And 100 of lidocaine. Push it 4. Now. Lasix, the nurse asked, stunned. That was a powerful diuretic, a water pill. Lidocaine, the resident balked. For his heart rhythm. Do it, Dr. Reed commanded, her voice leaving no room for argument. The medical team, trained to follow the loudest voice, was now caught. Dr. Shaw was the director. Dr. Reed was the senior diagnostician. And the girl was the only one making sense. The nurse ripped open packages. A resident prepped the syringe. We don't have time for this, Shaw said, his voice tight. He's been down for 2 minutes. Then start compressions. Abigail ordered the resident beside her. Hard and fast. Don't stop. The young doctor, dazed, immediately began chest compressions. Meds are in, the nurse called out. Good. Now stop compressions, Abigail said. She picked up the paddles. Her hands were small but steady. Abigail, Martha whispered in terror. Charge to 200, Abigail said. The machine whined. Clear. She pressed the buttons. The man's body arched off the cot. Every eye went to the monitor. The flat line remained. A terrible, suffocating silence filled the tent. Dr. Shaw let out a short, bitter laugh. Well, doctor, any other bright ideas? Or are you done playing? Abigail's face was pale. She stared at the monitor. She was remembering her great-grandmother's words. Sometimes, the pump is just too tired. You have cleared the water, you have calmed the rhythm. But it has forgotten how to beat. You must remind it. She was missing a step. The heart was weak. It wasn't just the fluid. It was the pump itself. What's his potassium level? Abigail asked. We don't know, the resident said. We just got him. It doesn't matter. Abigail looked at the nurse. Get me a vial of epinephrine, and one of atropine, and a 10 cubic centimeters syringe of calcium chloride. AP? Calcium, Dr. Reed said, her eyes widening. Child, you're just throwing drugs at him. His heart is stopped, Abigail said, her voice ragged. The lidocaine was to stop the V-fib. It worked. Now he's in asystole. He's flatlined. The Lasix is pulling the fluid. But the heart muscle is too weak to restart. The calcium will help the muscle contract. The AP will jumpstart it. She was no longer a girl. She was a force. The team, now fully under her spell, moved. Push the AP and atropine. Now, Abigail commanded. In, said the nurse. Resume compressions. The resident pumped. 10 seconds. 20. Stop. All eyes on the monitor. Nothing. Push the calcium chloride. Slow. Abigail said, her voice almost a whisper. It's in, the nurse said, her own voice trembling. Charge to 300, Abigail said. Clear. She shocked him again. The man's body jerked. A single, lonely blip appeared on the monitor. Then another. Then a third. Beep, beep, beep. It was a slow, ragged rhythm. But it was a rhythm. Sats are 81. The nurse whispered, her eyes filling with tears. 82, they're climbing. The patient, who had been a deathly blue-gray, suddenly took a gasping, shuddering breath. His color began to change, from gray to a pale, waxy pink. He groaned. Abigail let the paddles drop. They hung from their cords, swinging slightly. She stepped back from the cot. The tent was absolutely silent. The residents, the nurses, even Dr. Shaw, just stared. They had witnessed an execution stayed. A resurrection. Martha sagged against the tent pole, her legs giving out. She was sobbing, but this time, it was not from shame. Abigail's hands began to tremble, the adrenaline draining away, leaving her 17 again. The white-knuckled certainty was gone. She looked at the patient, now breathing through the nasal cannula. She looked at the monitors, which showed a steady, if weak, heartbeat. Then, she looked at Dr. Shaw. His face was a storm of conflicting emotions. There was shock. There was confusion. But beneath it all was a deep, cold, and profound rage. He had not just been proven wrong. He had been humiliated. He had been shown up by a 17-year-old girl in a janitor's uniform. Dr. Evelyn Reed walked past the cot. She stood directly in front of Abigail. She looked at the girl's trembling hands. She looked into her sharp, intelligent eyes. Her voice was quiet, holding a new kind of respect. Who? Dr. Reed asked. Are you? Before Abigail could answer, Dr. Shaw found his voice. It was no longer booming or sarcastic. It was quiet. Deadly. Get her out of here. Robert, be reasonable, Dr. Reed started. I said, get her out, Shaw repeated. She is not staff. She is not credentialed. She just assaulted a patient with a defibrillator and pushed unsanctioned drugs. Security. 2 men in security uniforms, who had been watching from the flap of the tent, moved forward. She saved his life, the young resident protested. She got lucky, Shaw spat. She practices voodoo medicine, and this time it didn't kill him. We have no idea what long-term damage she just caused. Get her out of my tent. The guards looked hesitant. Abby, Martha said, scrambling to her feet. Let's go. Please, let's just go. She grabbed her daughter's arm. Abigail didn't resist this time. She let her mother pull her away. She was too tired to fight. As the guards escorted them toward the exit flap, Abigail looked back one last time. The patient was sitting up, breathing. Dr. Reed was watching her go, her expression one of intense, calculating curiosity. And Dr. Shaw was staring at her, his eyes promising a reckoning. As the tent flap closed behind them, cutting them off from the world of medicine and light, Martha pulled her into a fierce hug. "Oh, Abby, what did you do? What did you do?" "I saved him, Mama," Abigail whispered against her mother's shoulder. "I know," Martha cried. "I know. But what are they going to do to us?" The heavy canvas flap of the medical tent slapped shut behind them. The sound was sharp, final. It was like being ejected from a bright, loud world into a silent, green one. The humid Appalachian evening was settling in. Crickets were starting to chirp. The sounds of the medical camp, the hum of the generator, the distant, muffled voices, were already fading as the two security guards walked them to the edge of the camp's perimeter. The guards were not unkind. They looked embarrassed. "Ma'am, we're sorry," one of them said to Martha. The supervisor said, "Well, he said to collect your things from the locker tent. Your pay for the week is in this envelope." Martha's hand, red and chapped, reached out to take the small white envelope. It was thin. "So, we're fired," Martha stated. It wasn't a question. "I'm afraid so, ma'am. Dr. Shaw's orders. He said you're not to be on the site." Martha nodded, her dignity a thin, brittle shield. "I understand. Thank you." She turned and, without looking at her daughter, began the long walk down the dirt path that led to their small cabin 2 miles below. Abigail walked beside her. For 10 minutes, the only sound was the crunch of their footsteps on the gravel and Martha's quiet, hitching breaths. The shame of being dismissed by Dr. Shaw had been replaced by a cold, numbing dread. "He'll ruin us, Abby," Martha finally whispered. Her voice was cracked. "He's a big, important man. From a big city. He'll tell everyone we're troublemakers. No one will hire me. Not even to clean at the diner." "He was wrong," Abigail said. Her voice was flat. The adrenaline was gone, leaving a deep, hollow exhaustion. "Right or wrong doesn't matter for people like us." Martha burst out, stopping on the path. She spun to face her daughter, her face pale in the dusk. "You don't see, do you? You're so smart, but you don't see what you've done. You humiliated him. Men like that, they don't forget. They don't forgive. You made him look like a fool in front of his people." "He was a fool," Abigail said, a spark of the earlier fire returning. "He was killing that man. I listened to his chest sounds when I was wiping the gurney. There were crackles at the base. But his EKG was showing SD elevation. His chart said he had a history of high blood pressure. All the signs were there. Shaw didn't even look. He just barked orders." Martha stared at her. "Listen? How did you?" "I didn't use a stethoscope," Abigail said. "You don't always need one. Great-Grandma Florence wrote that you can hear pulmonary edema just by listening to them breathe. It's a wet sound. A rattle. Pneumonia is a dry sound. A tight sound. He was wet, and Shaw was pumping him full of more fluid." Martha shook her head, her fear momentarily eclipsed by a familiar frustration. "That book, Abigail. You live in that book. This isn't 1944. This isn't a war. You can't just do what you did. You're not a doctor. You're a child." "He told me to," Abigail said, her voice dropping. "He told you to. Go heal him," he said. He was laughing at us." The defiance in her voice broke, and for the first time, the 17-year-old girl reappeared. A tear traced a clean path through the grime on her cheek. "He made you cry, Mama." Martha's anger dissolved. She pulled her daughter into a fierce hug, right there on the dark, empty path. "Oh, my baby," she murmured, stroking her blonde hair. "My smart, brave, foolish girl. Yes, he made me cry. But I'm terrified for you. What's to stop him from calling the police? He said you assaulted that man." Abigail pulled back, her eyes clearing. "He won't." "How do you know?" "Because if he calls the police, he'll have to file a report. And if he files a report, he'll have to admit that the patient is alive. He'll have to admit that my treatment worked and his didn't. Men like him," she said, echoing her mother's words, "can't ever admit they were wrong. He won't call the police. He'll just make sure we disappear." Martha looked at her daughter, a stranger she had raised. "When did you get so old?" "I've just been paying attention, Mama," Abigail whispered. Back in the triage tent, the atmosphere was thick. The patient, Mr. Henderson, was now sitting up. He was breathing easily. The terrifying rattle was gone. The nurse who had pushed the drugs was checking his blood pressure. "It's 130/85, she announced, her voice full of wonder. "It's stable. His sats are 96% on the cannula. His lungs are clear." "I can't believe it." Dr. Shaw was standing by a sink, stripping off his gloves. His back was rigid. She was right. The young resident, the one who had done compressions, said aloud. He couldn't help himself. It was flash pulmonary edema. A cardiac event, not a respiratory one. She diagnosed it in 30 seconds. "She got lucky, Dr. Miles," Shaw said, his voice dangerously quiet. "She threw a pharmacy at him, and one of the drugs stuck. It was a reckless, idiotic display, and I will not have it discussed." Robert, Dr. Evelyn Reed had been watching him. She walked over, her glasses low on her nose. "A word. Outside." She didn't wait for a reply. She pushed through the tent flap. For a moment, Shaw didn't move. The entire team was watching him. Slowly, deliberately, he dried his hands and followed her. Outside, the air was cooler. Dr. Reed was standing with her arms crossed. "That was," she said, "the most disgraceful display of arrogance I have ever witnessed. And I include myself in that, for letting it go on as long as it did." "Evelyn, you have no right." "I have every right," she cut him off. "Your ego, Robert. Your pride. You were so convinced of your own diagnosis that you ignored the patient. You ignored the symptoms. You saw fluid in the lungs, and you stopped thinking. You were going to let that man die, so long as you died following your own protocol. And what she did was better." Shaw shot back. "Unsterile. Unlicensed. She's a child. A janitor's daughter. What if she'd been wrong? What if the calcium chloride had sent him into an irreversible arrhythmia? It's my license on the line. Mine." "She wasn't wrong," Reed said simply. "That's what's eating you, isn't it? It's not that she was reckless. It's that she was right. Her diagnosis was more astute, her treatment more effective, than the chief of surgery for the entire Albright Foundation." Shaw's face was white. "I had her fired. Her and her mother." Evelyn Reed looked at him, and her expression was not one of anger. It was one of pity. "You did that," she said, "because you are a bully. But more than that, you did it because you are a coward. You are afraid of her. You are afraid of an uneducated 17-year-old girl. I am not. You are. You're afraid of what she represents. That all your years, all your titles, all your prestige can be undone by someone with a clear pair of eyes and a brain that works. You made a joke, Robert. You told a maid to heal a dying man, and her daughter did. Now you have to live with that." She started to walk away. "I'm filing a report, Evelyn," he called after her. "I'm having her credentials, if she even has them, blacklisted." Dr. Reed stopped. She looked back at him, a sad smile on her face. "You do that, Robert. You write your report, and I'll write mine." She left him standing there alone in the dark. Their cabin was tiny, just 3 rooms, but it was spotless. Martha sat at the small kitchen table, her head in her hands. The envelope with the cash was on the table. It wasn't enough to cover rent. Abigail ignored it. She walked to her small bedroom. Under her cot, she pulled out a battered wooden box. She opened it. Inside, there was only one thing. A leather-bound journal, its cover worn smooth, the paper inside yellowed and fragile. The spine was stamped with a small medical caduceus and the name, Florence Albright. Albright, Abigail whispered to herself. The same name as the foundation that had just fired her. She had always wondered. She'd been told her great-grandmother was a distant, poor relation of the famous medical family. A black sheep. She brought the journal to the kitchen table. Martha looked up, her eyes red. "Not that book, Abby. Please. I don't have the strength for your stories tonight." "It's not a story," Abigail said. She opened it to a page marked with a faded red ribbon. Her finger traced the elegant, sharp handwriting. "August 1944. Field Hospital. St. Lo." Abigail read aloud. Her voice was steady. "Patient presented with severe dyspnea, frothing at the mouth, and cyanosis. The field surgeon immediately diagnosed mustard gas exposure." He was wrong. She looked at her mother. The man's veins were like ropes. His heart was failing. "I call it drowning from the inside. The surgeon was trying to clear his lungs, but I knew we had to drain his body. I gave him a high-dose tincture of foxglove to strengthen the heart, and a crude diuretic I made from horsetail. The surgeon called me a witch. But the patient lived." Abigail closed the book. She saw it, Mama, over and over, and she wrote it down. What to look for, what to do. I didn't guess. I, I knew. I've read this book every night for 5 years. I know it by heart. I know her. Martha looked at the book, then at her daughter's earnest, intelligent face. The fear was still there, but a new emotion was creeping in. Oh, your great-grandmother. She was a legend. My grandmother used to say she was the smartest woman anyone in our line had ever known, and the bravest. She saved hundreds of men. And they kicked her out of the Army Nurse Corps, Abigail said quietly, for insubordination and practicing medicine without authority. Just like Dr. Shaw. The parallel hung in the air between them. A sharp knock on the cabin door made both of them jump. Martha's face went white. It's him. It's the police. I told you. No, Abigail said. It's not. She walked to the door. Her mother hissed. Abby, don't. Abigail opened it. On their small, dark porch stood Dr. Evelyn Reed. She was holding a flashlight, and she looked tired. She looked past Abigail to Martha. Mrs. Martha, my name is Dr. Reed. I was in the tent. Martha stood up, wringing her hands. Ma'am, my daughter, she didn't mean any harm. Dr. Reed's eyes moved to Abigail. Then they moved to the table. She saw the open journal. Her eyes widened, just slightly, as she read the name on the cover. Florence A. Albright. Good heavens, Dr. Reed breathed. She looked back at Abigail, her gaze no longer just curious, but sharp with sudden, dawning comprehension. I need, Dr. Reed said, to sit down. And you, young lady, need to tell me everything. Martha, her hands trembling, fumbled in the cabinet for a mug. Tea? We just have tea. Tea would be lovely. Thank you, Martha, Dr. Reed said, her voice gentle. She unslung a worn leather satchel from her shoulder and placed it on the floor. She did not sit at the table. Instead, she knelt on the rough wooden floor in front of the open journal. Abigail watched her, her heart hammering. Martha, moving like a ghost, put a kettle of water on the small stove. Dr. Reed looked from the journal to Abigail, then back to the journal. Florence A. Albright. May I? Abigail nodded. Dr. Reed's fingers, long and practiced, touched the yellowed page with a diagnostician's care. She was not just reading the words. She was assessing the artifact. She saw the notes in the margins, written in a different, more modern pen, Abigail's handwriting. Questions, observations, cross-references to other pages. My great-grandmother, Abigail said, her voice barely a whisper. I know, Dr. Reed said. She finally sat in the chair Abigail had pulled out for her. I know who she was. Or rather, I know the legend. Martha brought over 2 mismatched mugs and a tea bag for Dr. Reed. Legend, ma'am. Dr. Reed wrapped her hands around the warm mug. Florence Albright, she said, her eyes distant, was the sister of Harrison Albright, the man who founded the foundation. The man whose name is on our tents, our paychecks, our equipment. Martha gasped. We were told we were a distant relation, a poor branch. You are, Dr. Reed said with a grim smile. You are the real branch. Harrison was a businessman. Florence was the genius. The story goes that Harrison built his initial fortune on a patent for a new type of field blood transfusion kit. A patent, she said, tapping the journal, that I would be willing to bet was based entirely on her work. Her battlefield innovations. Abigail looked down at the book. Page 94. A better system for blood. The glass bottles break. We need sterile, collapsible bags. Dr. Reed's smile faded. He made millions. Florence, as the story goes, refused to take a penny. She called it blood money. She said he had commercialized a tool meant to save lives, not build mansions. She continued to work in field hospitals and rural clinics. She died with nothing. Harrison Albright, in his old age, felt a surge of guilt. He started the Albright Foundation to bring medicine to the world, using the money he'd stolen from her to do it. She was the black sheep, Martha, because she was the only one with any integrity. Dr. Reed took a sip of the tea. And you, she looked at Abigail, are her direct descendant. And you have her book. She's always been smart, Doctor, Martha said, her voice shaking. Too smart. She reads all the time. Doesn't have friends. Just this. She pointed to the journal. I tried to get her to read other things. Novels. School books. But it was always that. Why? Dr. Reed asked Abigail directly. It's not just a book. It's a manual. For you. Why? Abigail stared at her hands. Because, No one else would listen. Listen to what? To what was wrong? Abigail said, a sudden, fierce passion in her voice. I see it. I see it all the time. Little things. The way Mrs. Gable at the post office breathes. She holds her breath when she stamps the letters. Her ankles are swollen. Her doctor says it's her weight. But I see the slight tremor in her left hand. I think she has Parkinson's, but no one is checking. She looked at Dr. Reed, her blue eyes sharp and desperate. Or Mr. Henderson. On the cot. Dr. Shaw looked at the monitor. I looked at the patient. The monitor just tells you what's happening. The patient tells you why. His skin was clammy, but his fever was low. That's not infection. That's shock. His body was shutting down. All the signs were there. Dr. Shaw just didn't look. He was trying to treat a number on a screen. Dr. Reed was motionless. She was staring at Abigail as if she were a new, unclassified species. Abigail, Dr. Reed said, her voice very low. Do you have any idea what you did tonight? Abigail flinched. I saved him. Yes, you did, Dr. Reed agreed. You also, in the eyes of the law and the American Medical Association, committed multiple felonies. Practicing medicine without a license. Assault with a medical device. Administering controlled substances. Dr. Shaw is not just angry, child. He is correct. From a legal standpoint. Martha sat down heavily. I knew it. He's in the main tent right now, Dr. Reed continued, dictating an incident report. He is going to recommend that the local prosecutor file charges against you. He's building a case that you are a danger, a loose cannon, and that he had to fire your mother to protect the camp from liability. But you, Martha stammered. You're a doctor. You saw. You can tell them. I can, Dr. Reed said. I can file a dissenting report. I can state that, in my medical opinion, your daughter's intervention was directly responsible for saving the patient's life. It will become my word against Dr. Shaw's. Who will they believe? Abigail asked. Dr. Reed gave a small, sad smile. He is the director of the foundation, a world-renowned surgeon, and a man. I am a diagnostician. And you? You are a 17-year-old girl with a book from World War II. It is not a fair fight. Abigail's face hardened. So, you're not going to help. I didn't say that. Dr. Reed leaned forward. I have a complex case. A patient I've been consulting on back in Baltimore. A young man, 30 years old. He's been to 8 specialists. He's dying. We don't know why. We are all, as you put it, treating the numbers on the screen. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a thick manila folder. She dropped it on the table on top of the journal. I'm going to finish my tea. I'm going to walk back to the camp. It's a 2-mile walk. Let's say 1 hour. Abigail just stared at the folder. What is this? It's his file, Dr. Reed said. Charts. Blood work. EKG strips. MRI reports. Everything. 8 specialists have looked at this, Abigail. 8 world-class minds. And we are all stumped. She stood up and put her mug in the sink. You're not a doctor. You're not a student. You are, as Dr. Shaw so cruelly pointed out, the help. But I saw what I saw. And I am a scientist before I am a colleague. And I cannot ignore new data. She walked to the door. I'm going to file my report tonight, Dr. Reed said. What I write in it depends on what I find when I come back in an hour. Martha looked at the folder as if it were a bomb. Doctor, wait. What are you asking her to do? It's not fair. You're using her. Dr. Reed turned, her hand on the doorknob. Her kind eyes were now as hard as steel. Yes, Martha. I am. Because Robert Shaw is not just a bully. He's a bad doctor. He's arrogant. He's lazy. And he cuts corners. And his ego is going to get people killed. I can't fight him on policy. I can't fight him on hospital politics. He always wins. She looked at Abigail. But I can fight him with results. That man in the tent, Mr. Henderson, that was one result. Give me another. Give me something I can use. Give me leverage. Show me that tonight wasn't a one-time guess. Show me you are your great-grandmother's heir. She opened the door and stepped out into the dark. 1 hour, Abigail. The door clicked shut. Abigail and Martha were alone. The only sound was the ticking of a small clock on the wall and the distant hum of the generator from the camp they were banished from. Martha looked at the thick folder. Abby, don't. It's a trap. She's just like him. No, she's not, Abigail said. She pulled the folder toward her. Her hands were steady now. She's smart. And she's desperate. And she's given me a chance. A chance? A chance to do what? To go to jail. A chance to prove I'm not crazy, Abigail said. She opened the folder. The first page was a summary. Patient, James Pope, 32 years old. Presenting complaint, progressive muscle weakness, episodic syncope, fainting, and persistent, unexplained fevers. Abigail pulled the journal closer. She flipped to the back, where Florence had created a cross-referenced index of symptoms. Fever, persistent. Weakness, general. Mama, Abigail said, her eyes already scanning the first page of blood work. I need you to be quiet, and I need more light. Martha watched her daughter. The child who had been weeping on the path was gone. The girl who had been fired was gone. In her place was a woman she had never seen before. Her daughter's face was set in a look of absolute, terrifying concentration. She was no longer just reading. She was hunting. Martha lit the 2 kerosene lamps they owned and placed them on the table. She sat down, her hands clasped, and began to pray. Meanwhile, back at the camp, Dr. Shaw was pacing in the administrative tent. A young, nervous-looking legal aide from the foundation was sitting at a laptop. And in summary, Shaw dictated, the unauthorized and reckless actions of the minor, Abigail, and her mother, Martha, who facilitated the breach, represent a class 1 liability risk to the foundation. I was forced to remove them from the premises to ensure the safety of our patients and the integrity of our mission. That's very clear, Doctor, the aide said. It needs to be, Shaw said, stopping his pacing. I want this report filed with corporate and a copy sent to the local sheriff's department first thing in the morning. The sheriff, sir? Are you pressing charges? I am ensuring that the foundation is protected. If that man, he jerked his thumb toward the triage tent, develops any complications, any at all, from the ridiculous cocktail of drugs that girl pushed, I will not have it come back on me. This report establishes a timeline. It proves I was in control and that I took immediate, decisive action to remove the threat. And, Dr. Reed's report, sir? Shaw's face darkened. Dr. Reed is emotional. She was shaken. Her report will reflect her opinion, but it is my signature on the mission charter. My report is the one that matters. He felt a vibration in his pocket. His satellite phone. He pulled it out and looked at the screen. It was a text from his office back in New York. It read, Henderson is awake, asking for the girl who saved him. His family is on the way. They own half the county. Shaw's blood ran cold. He had assumed the patient was a local, a nobody. He looked at the legal aid. On second thought, hold off on sending that to the sheriff. Let me review it one more time. He walked out of the tent, his mind racing. This was no longer a simple matter of firing a maid. This was now a problem of optics. The clock on the wall ticked. Each sound was a hammer blow in the small, silent cabin. Abigail didn't read the file page by page. Her eyes flew across the reports, not like she was reading, but like she was searching. She was a predator hunting for a single, specific clue. Martha watched, her fear turning into a strange, breathless awe. Her daughter was not just reading. She was cross-referencing. She would scan a blood panel, then flip to the back of her great-grandmother's journal. She'd read a nurse's intake note, then flip to a page in the journal marked, Fevers, Unexplained. Here, Abigail whispered. She pointed to a line item on the blood work. Eosinophils, 15%. Is that bad? Martha asked. It's not bad, Abigail murmured. It's high. Very high. The normal range is 1 to 4. What does it mean? It means the body is fighting. The doctors here, she tapped the file, they think it's a parasite. They've tested him for Toxocora, Trichinella, all negative. They've tested for allergic reactions. All negative. They're lost. They're just lost. Abigail closed her eyes. She wasn't just thinking. She was trying to see the patient. A 32-year-old man. Fainting. Muscle weakness. Fevers. And blood that was screaming about an invasion. They're all looking for something living, Abigail said. A bacteria, a virus, a worm. What if it's not alive? She flipped to a section in Florence's journal she had read a dozen times. It was a section on battlefield environments. The men in the hayloft, she read aloud. Martha listened, mesmerized. We put 12 men in an old barn near Amiens. Within 3 days, 5 were sick. Not with wounds. With a sickness of the air. Fever, a cough so deep it shook the ribs, and a profound weakness. 2 of the men's hearts fluttered like a trapped bird, syncope. The surgeon said it was trench fever. He was wrong. It was the hay. It was full of mold. I moved the men to a dry tent. I gave them whiskey and aspirin, all I had. They recovered. The ones who stayed, their lungs turned to stone. I have seen this before. In farmers. In men who work in silos. It is not an infection. It is the dust. The dust sickness. The body is fighting a ghost. Abigail's eyes snapped open. She tore through the file, past the blood work, past the MRIs, until she found the initial patient history. A 6-page document. The other doctors had skimmed it. She read it. Patient, James Pope. Occupation, architect. That was what the specialist saw. But Abigail kept reading. Abigail's hand was shaking. She grabbed a pencil. It's not a worm, Mama, she said, her voice electric. It's the house. He's breathing in fungal spores. Billions of them. From moldy walls, old plaster, rotted wood. It's farmer's lung. Or silofiller's disease. They have a modern name for it. She scribbled on a blank sheet of paper. Chronic hypersensitivity pneumonitis. He's not infected, she said, writing quickly. He's having a massive, systemic inflammatory reaction. His body thinks it's being invaded, so it's attacking itself. The fever is from the inflammation. The weakness is from his lungs not getting enough air. The fainting, the syncope, is because the inflammation is putting so much pressure on his heart, it can't beat right. The eosinophils are high because it's an allergic response, not a parasitic one. She stopped writing. They're giving him antibiotics. They're trying to kill a germ that isn't there. All they're doing is destroying his gut. They're not stopping the one thing that's killing him. What? What stops it? Martha whispered. You stop the why. You get him out of the house. And you stop the inflammation. She wrote 2 words on the bottom of the page. Prednisone. Now. She looked at the clock. 48 minutes had passed. He's dying, Abigail said, because 8 specialists are looking at his blood and not his life. As if summoned, a knock came at the door. Martha opened it. Dr. Reed stood on the porch, her face unreadable in the dark. Your hour is up. Abigail stood. She walked to the door and held out the single sheet of paper. Here, she said. Dr. Reed took the paper. She held her flashlight to it. She read it once, then a second time. Her face, which had been tight with skepticism, slowly slackened. She looked from the paper to the file on the table, then to the open journal. Farmer's lung, she said. From the renovation. Yes, Abigail said. The eosinophils. It's not a parasite. It's an immune response to the spores. Yes. And you're recommending high-dose steroids. Immediately, Abigail said. And an air quality test of the farmhouse. He's breathing in aspergillus or stachybotrys. He's drowning in it. Dr. Reed looked at the 17-year-old girl. She saw no pride. No arrogance. Just certainty. How? Dr. Reed whispered. Did you know? Abigail just tapped the leather journal. My great-grandmother knew. She saw it in a barn in France in 1944. Dr. Reed was silent for a long, heavy moment. She folded the piece of paper and put it in her coat pocket. Lock this door, Martha, Dr. Reed ordered. Do not open it for anyone. Not the police. Not the guards. Especially not Dr. Shaw. Do you understand me? Martha nodded, her eyes wide. Dr. Reed looked at Abigail. What you did tonight. It may have just started a war, child. Or it may have ended one. I'm not sure which. She turned and disappeared into the night, walking quickly, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The administrative tent was bright. Dr. Shaw was pouring his 4th cup of coffee. The legal aide was typing, his face pale. Let's just reread the section on liability. Shaw was saying, his voice strained. He was stalling. The text about the Henderson family had terrified him. The tent flap ripped open. Dr. Reed strode in, her face like thunder. Evelyn, Shaw said, forcing a smile. I was just clarifying my report. We need to protect the foundation, of course, but I am not here about Henderson, Robert, Dr. Reed said. You're not. He was confused. I'm here about James Pope, the Baltimore consult. Shaw's brow furrowed. The multi-system failure? What about him? Dr. Reed threw Abigail's note on the table. I got a new consult. From the girl you just fired. Shaw picked it up. He read it. A look of disbelief crossed his face, followed by a short, barking laugh. Farmer's lung? Are you insane? We ran a full pulmonary workup. His lungs are clear. This is absurd. His lungs are not clear, Dr. Reed said, her voice low and dangerous. They are systemically inflamed. You didn't see it on the X-ray because it's not a bacterial mass. It's tissue-wide inflammation. You saw the high eosinophil count, and you went on a safari. You never once considered the environment. He's renovating a 150-year-old house. He's breathing in mold. Shaw's smile vanished. He knew the case. He knew the high eosinophil count. He knew they had found no parasite. He had been as stumped as the others. It's a guess, Evelyn. A lucky guess. It's the only diagnosis that fits every single symptom, she shot back. The fever, the weakness, the syncope, the blood work. It explains everything. And it comes with a testable solution. She pulled out her satellite phone. What are you doing? Shaw asked, a new dread creeping into his voice. I'm calling Dr. Michaels in Baltimore. I'm telling him to push 60 milligrams of flurprednisone. Tonight. You can't. Shaw lunged forward. You're acting on the advice of an uneducated child. If you're wrong, if he has a fungal infection and you give him steroids, you will suppress his immune system and kill him. You will be ruined, Evelyn. And you will take this foundation with you. And if she's right, Dr. Reed said, not flinching, a man who has been dying for 6 months will be breathing freely by morning. A man your entire team of specialists gave up on. I'm willing to stake my career on that. Are you? She began to dial. Shaw watched her, his face ashen. He was a gambler who had just seen his opponent go all in. He looked at the legal aide, who was staring, wide-eyed. He looked at the report on the screen, the one that would ruin a 17-year-old girl. He looked at Dr. Reed, who was calmly waiting for her call to connect. Evelyn. Wait. His voice was a croak. She stopped dialing. Don't make that call. Not yet. Why not, Robert? This is a complex situation. We need consensus. I have consensus, Dr. Reed said. It's between me, a 17-year-old girl, and her great-grandmother's journal. It's the only medical team that's been right all day. Shaw collapsed into his chair. He was defeated. Utterly. He had been outmaneuvered, outdiagnosed, and outclassed. He had no leverage. She had all of it. What do you want? He whispered. The legal aide stopped typing. First, Dr. Reed said, you're going to delete that report. Shaw looked at the screen. His entire case. His protection. His pride. His hand moved to the mouse. He highlighted the text. And he hit the delete key. Second, Dr. Reed continued. You will issue a full, formal apology to Martha and Abigail. And you will rehire them. With back pay for the humiliation. Shaw nodded, his eyes closed. Third, Mr. Henderson is awake. His family is on the way. I'm sure you know who they are. You are going to go to his bedside. And you are going to tell him, and his wife, and his sons, the truth. Shaw's eyes snapped open. The truth. That you misdiagnosed him. That you nearly killed him. And that his life was saved by the diagnostic genius of a young woman named Abigail. The maid's daughter. You will give her the credit. All of it. Not your team. Not a new consult. Her. Is that clear? This was the true punishment. Not the loss of his job, but the complete and total annihilation of his ego. You're destroying me, he whispered. No, Robert, Dr. Reed said, putting her phone away. You're destroying yourself. I'm just stopping you from taking anyone else with you. She walked to the tent flap. I expect you to be at the Hendersons' cot when they arrive. And I expect your apology to Abigail to be delivered in person. By sunrise. She left. The legal aide stared at Dr. Shaw. The great man looked small, his face gray, his hands trembling. He looked at the blank screen on the laptop. He had been ruined. And it had all been done without a single raised voice. Dawn broke over the Appalachian ridges, painting the sky in pale shades of gray and pink. The light, however, did not bring warmth to the small cabin. A sharp, official knock echoed. Martha opened it. Dr. Reed stood there, her face set. It's time. The walk back to the camp was silent. Martha and Abigail, still in their cleaning uniforms, walked on either side of the senior doctor. When they reached the perimeter, the guards who had removed them just hours before now looked away, stepping aside to let them pass. The camp was already busy, but all activity seemed to stop as the trio walked toward the main tree-off tent. Nurses and residents paused, watching. Dr. Reed pushed open the flap. Inside, the tent was calm. Mr. Henderson was in his cot, drinking water. A woman with expensive clothes and kind, worried eyes sat beside him, holding his hand. 2 tall men in their 20s stood at the foot of the bed. His family. Dr. Robert Shaw was standing near the cot, his white coat rumpled. He looked like he hadn't slept. He looked, for the first time, small. He saw them enter. His eyes met Abigail's, then slid away. "Ah, Evelyn," he said, his voice hoarse. "And Abigail. Martha, please, come in." Mr. Henderson looked up. His face, though pale, lit up when he saw Abigail. "That's her," he said to his wife, his voice weak. "That's the girl I told you about. The one who brought me back." His wife, Mrs. Henderson, stood up. She looked from the powerful Dr. Shaw to the 17-year-old girl in the janitor's scrubs. "Doctor," she asked Shaw, "what is this? This girl?" Dr. Reed simply looked at Shaw. This was his moment. His crucible. Shaw swallowed. He walked to the center of the small space. His entire team, the residents, the nurses, were watching him. "Mrs. Henderson," he began, his voice cracking. "Mr. Henderson, I owe you an apology, and I owe one to this young woman." He turned to Abigail. His eyes were red-rimmed, his arrogance completely stripped away. "I misdiagnosed your husband," he said, his voice just loud enough for the tent to hear. "I was convinced it was an infection. I was giving him fluids and oxygen that were. You were killing me," Mr. Henderson said. It was not an accusation. It was a simple, flat statement. "Yes," Shaw whispered. I was arrogant. I was wrong." He looked at Abigail, who stood beside her mother, her face pale. I humiliated her. And her mother. And then, I made a joke. I told her. I challenged her to save him. And she did." He held up a hand, silencing the murmurs. "Her diagnosis was perfect. It was brilliant. She identified acute pulmonary edema, a severe cardiac event. She prescribed the correct, life-saving sequence of medications. She used the defibrillator with more skill than a 10-year resident. I did not save your husband, Mrs. Henderson. She did. Her name is Abigail, and she is a genius." The silence that followed was absolute. Mrs. Henderson stared, then her face crumpled. She walked past Dr. Shaw and pulled Abigail into a fierce hug. You saved him. You saved my husband." Martha was openly weeping, her hand covering her mouth. "Dr. Reed," one of the Henderson sons said, stepping forward. He was a lawyer, his gaze sharp. "This is extraordinary. What happens now? For her? And for him?" He jerked his head at Shaw. "Dr. Shaw," Reed said, "will be taking a long, extended sabbatical from the Foundation. Effective immediately." Shaw nodded, accepting his fate. "And as for Abigail," Dr. Reed continued, a small, rare smile touching her lips. Her satellite phone buzzed. She looked at it. "Excellent news," she said to the room. "The patient in Baltimore, Mr. Pope. His fever broke an hour after the steroid infusion. His lungs are clearing. He's asking for food." She looked at Abigail, her eyes shining with a fierce, proud light. The Albright Foundation was built on a lie. It was built on the stolen genius of Florence Albright. It seems only fitting that it be saved by her heir. She turned to the Hendersons. "Abigail needs to go to school. She has a lot to teach people." Mrs. Henderson didn't hesitate. "Whatever it costs. Johns Hopkins, Harvard, whatever she wants. Consider it done." Abigail looked at her mother, then at Dr. Reed, then at the worn leather journal she still held in her hands. She had been a shadow, a ghost, a maid's daughter. But the knowledge she held was real. It was a power that cut through pride and titles and arrogance. It was the power to heal. "I accept," Abigail said, her voice clear and steady in the quiet of the tent. "I have a lot to learn. And," she added, looking at the assembled doctors, "I have a lot to teach." Dr. Reed put an arm around her. "Yes, you do." The two of them stood there, the veteran diagnostician and the young prodigy. A circle, closed after 2 generations. The genius of the woman who wrote the book had finally found its voice in the girl who had read it. And that's where we'll end the story for now. Whenever I share one of these, I hope it gives you a chance to step out of the everyday and just drift for a bit. I'd love to know what you were doing while listening. Maybe you were listening with a cup of tea, sitting on the porch, or just settling in for a calm evening. Drop a line in the comments. I really do read them all. And if you want to make sure we cross paths again, hitting like and subscribing makes a huge difference. We are always trying to improve our stories, so feel free to also drop your feedback in the comment section below. Thanks for spending this time with me.